Hello, welcome to episode 202 of Herpetological Highlights. My name's Tom Major, and co-hosting, as always, is Ben Marshall.
Hey.
All right, Ben. And so in this episode 202, we are talking about some fascinating little dart frogs again. I'm actually getting a little bit obsessed with these frogs.
I thought you were going to say I'm absolutely fed up with these frogs and we need to find something else. I was fully waiting for you to go on a tirade about how they're overrated.
Sick to the back teeth of them. God, everyone thinks they're so cool, so pretty, so small, so poisonous. Spare me. No, I think they are really awesome.
They are.
Yeah. The more I read about them, having seen a few, and this combination of being stunningly beautiful, but also backing it up with some quite unusual, unique behavior. They've got quite a lot going on. They're very competitive. Lots of different interesting strategies to exist on their forest floor homes. I can't get enough. I cannot get enough. So let's introduce this paper today. It's by Gómez-Consuegra and Amézquita, 2024, Ecological and Behavioral Correlates of Homing Performance in the Egg-Feeding Poison Frog Oophaga histrionica, published in Evolutionary Ecology. Yeah, just reading the word behavioral without a U in it. Oh, horrible. But there it is. So we are back on dart frogs.
Also, egg feeding. No, we've got to hit egg feeding first.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you've got some intro prepared, but like egg feeding?
It's mostly about eggs. Egg feeding. So yeah, we got an egg eater here. But it's not the adults that eat the eggs, is it? It's the babies.
Right. Provisioned eggs in their bromeliad homes.
Really nice. So the females... The young hatch from eggs on land, and then the female transports the tadpoles to small pools of water, which collects in plants, usually bromeliads. And then she provisions them with infertile eggs, feeds them, drops little infertile eggs into the little water pocket. What a romantic lifestyle for these tadpoles. Just chowing down on mama's eggs. What more could you want, really?
In their balcony, wonderful views of the forest.
I know, yeah. And the name, the genus of these frogs is Oophagus, which references the fact that they eat ooze, aka eggs. So ancient Greek for egg was oon, and they get the generic name Oophagus from that. I myself am Oophagus, but not as specialized as these frogs. Humans don't eat their mother's eggs. That'd be weird and impossible. But yeah, do you know what? One thing I really liked about this, Ben, is there's a name for the little pools of water that the frogs lay their eggs in. Well, not that they lay their eggs in it, they raise their tadpoles in and drop the eggs in.
Are they like, what would you call them? Like leaf cribs or watery nurseries?
It's a scientific word, Ben. Not.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Aqua cribbo?
Closer. They're called phytotelmatas.
I wasn't even close. No, that's...
And that is not one I'm going to remember.
Phytotelmatas, huh?
Yeah, phytotelmatas, these delightful little pools that collect in the bromeliads where the frogs can raise their young. And the specific dart frog we're talking about is Oophaga histrionica, which is another interesting name. Histrionica likely derives from the Latin word histrio, which means actor or performer, and ica just means like belonging to. So it means they're an actor, which is like, what? Do they do some kind of performance? Usually it's related to either acting or performing, suggesting some kind of like dramatic or theatrical behavior. But these frogs are not overly dramatic. They're actually named after the actors known as harlequins from Italian theatre, who wore these like brightly coloured tunics with like brightly coloured pattern shapes. And some of these frogs, well, they're all brightly coloured. Many of them have sort of like a sort of diamondy pattern on them, which somewhat resembles these Italian harlequins. So that's how they got the name.
Which is individually unique as well, correct? The patterns? Because that's how they ID individuals in this paper, is through their distinct markings on their backs.
Very cool. I did not realize that. I assume they mark them in some way. That's really cool. Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me they're unique, but the fact that you can actually like identify individuals, they're that unique, they're that different. I suppose these people are frog experts. They're probably pretty experienced at noticing the differences.
Yeah, they also had backup photographs, so I assume that they had the capability of sort of going back and checking and comparing. So they were documenting them all.
So the scientific name is Oophaga histrionica, and the common name is the harlequin dart frog. So harlequin named after these Italian actors. And actually, the ones in this paper were yellow and black, weren't they? But they can be all different colours, this species. They can be yellow, black, red. Some of them are blue and grey. They come in all manner of patterns. Some of them have like blobs. Some of them have like a sort of net pattern. It's actually a little bit mind-boggling, the array of different colours that they have. I'm assuming they're geographically variable, like other dart frogs. But yeah, they come in a wide pattern variety, which is quite cool as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually do make a noise, these frogs. And I have it here for you, Ben. You ready for this?
Oh, excellent. Yes.
That's the sound they make.
That's quite
So we
a
have
classic small frog noise, that.
It really is, isn't it? Like, yeah, it's just like, I can make a sound. There's not much to it, but I can make a sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to David Birkback for uploading this to YouTube. They are his pet frogs. And they're the jazzy yellow and black kind. Sort of looks like a yellow net over a black background. Very small dart frog. And this is the call of a male. The females don't call. And the male in this video is reacting to the visual presence of an enemy male. He's calling as a result. And that speaks to the territorial nature of this species, doesn't it? They don't tolerate...
They're stubborn. Very stubborn.
Yeah, they don't tolerate other males. Before we go into the sort of territorial behavior, just to mention, these are found in lowland forests in Western Colombia. So we're in Central America. And like, you know, other dart frogs, it's in the family Dendrobatidae. And yeah, they're really territorial. The males will sort of guard a territory. And today we're going to be talking about a behavior called homing. And homing is where...
Going home.
Going home, yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're going home.
There's a certain time in the day where our sort of homing instincts start to kick in. It feels like it's time to go back. Not so much for me. I work from home most of the time.
If you lived here, you'd already be home. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I'm out and about, if it's a work day, maybe 5, 6 o'clock, you're ready to go home. Maybe if you're out with your pals, it gets to be a bit later. Maybe it's midnight, you've had a couple of beers, it's time to go home. We can all relate to that feeling. And yeah, the frogs are just the same. They home, and they do this because they know that home has resources like food or a mate or even a familiar shelter. And yeah, it's a reliable behavior and a relatable behavior that these frogs can kind of be expected to do. And there is this expectation that species which are either territorial, like these guys, or have parental care should have a stronger homing instinct. And these frogs have both. And like you said, the males are highly territorial. They usually hold a small patch of ground as their own. And it might be just a few meters wide. It might be like 20 or 30 or 40 meters wide. But in this species, they hold this sort of territory where they'll hunt and they'll have mates come along. And the territory will usually contain some resources like perches to call from and some pools of water for them to raise their young in. And if another male enters the territory, they will aggressively defend it because it's theirs.
So they have a very strong incentive to be there and be present in their territory. It needs to be actively defended, and you can't actively defend it while you're out and about multiple sort of meters away from it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, a few different species of these frogs have already been proven to exhibit homing behavior. So if you pick them up and wander off with them, drop them off, once you put them down, they'll start making their way back home. And it's kind of been established that the further you move them, the less likely they are to make it home. Again, same goes for me, honestly.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
If you drop me within a few miles of home, I'd probably recognise it. But if you drop me off in sort of Bodmin Moor...
Never seen again.
Yeah, might not make it home. The researchers would be patiently waiting back at my house. They wouldn't see me again. That's sad, but true. And so, yeah, so they basically the idea behind this was to set up an experiment to try and understand what factors influence how well these little dart frogs are able to get home. They started off, well, I guess, should we start off with them just moving them away from their territory and seeing how they get on?
Yeah, so they scooped up some frogs. I mean, I said they were individually recognizable. So you go out, you find these frogs in their designated nice, safe home, their territory, scoop them up, and they took them out 10 meters, 25 meters, or 40 meters away, and then worked out whether they were making their way back and how quickly they made their way back, as well as the sort of, what was it, the angle which they sort of returned as well. This sort of idea that if they were slightly off, they had a weaker homing performance, basically. If you can sort of beeline straight back to your territory, that was deemed a better homing performance than not.
Yeah, that's right. So the first thing they did was to sort of look at how distance affected it, right?
Yes,
So they tested to see whether they would return home from varying distances. And if they were moved either 10 meters or 25 meters, 100% of the time, the males returned back to their territory. Once you moved it up to 40 meters, it was only 92% making it back. So, but somewhere between 25 and 40, you start to get a bit of a drop off where frogs either get lost or decide it's not worth going home.
Right, that is an important base, because I posit this in the intro. Is like if you've suddenly found yourself so far from home that the effort to get back to that original territory outweighs the sort of costs of finding and sort of taking over a new territory. It might simply not be worth the effort. So it might not necessarily that the frogs can't find their way home. It might be that they don't really see the benefit of putting in that effort of making it all the way back, when there might be something equally as good in their new sort of displaced 40 meter away place that they've been dumped.
Kind of goes to show how much we appreciate our homes, doesn't it? Because is there anywhere you could get dropped where you wouldn't try and get back? Like, I'd always try and get back, even if it was like France. I'd still try. I wouldn't just start a new life in France and be like, guess it's baguettes and cheese now.
I don't know. It's a weird one there. We have a lot of investment in where we live, and also a lot of like, it's kind of awkward in other places.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of baggage.
Yeah, frogs travel light. That's the thing. Like, they can just pick it up somewhere else. So once they'd decided, they'd sort of worked out how far away they can get back, they then did some kind of experimental manipulations of the scene.
Yes.
And they also compared between different groups of frogs. So first of all, they thought that body size might have an effect. So maybe bigger frogs are better at getting home. Then they thought maybe distance to their nearest neighbor. So if they had a closer rival frog, that might influence it. They might speed it up, thinking the neighbors are going to come and take their territory.
Yep.
They also wondered if how many females they'd courted with in their territory would make a difference. Like, whoa, I've got to get back to that territory.
Yeah, how valuable that territory is to them.
Yep, exactly. And then they also added some fake calls to see if having more rivals nearby would make a difference. Like, oh, I've got to get back. There's pressure from other frogs nearby. But interestingly, none of these things mattered in terms of them actually getting back. There was some stuff to do with the angle. So you mentioned that one of the things they were looking at was the accuracy of their return direction.
Yes.
They thought maybe if they added calls of other males, that might have an impact on the accuracy of their return. So one thing they did was they put a fake male, so they put a little speaker in the exact spot where they found the frog and then started playing a frog call. And if they put that there, they were actually more accurate in their return. And the same was true if they changed the identity of the neighbors who were calling and if they added more males. So basically, anytime they manipulated the kind of soundscape to have either more males or different males, it seemed to make them more direct at coming back. One thing they thought was that if they played the calls of random frogs, that it might make them less accurate at coming back, like because they might be like, well, who's that frog? I don't recognize that as my neighbor.
These unfamiliar neighbors, they're not my neighbors. I must be in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, that wasn't the case. They didn't really seem to care at all which frogs they were hearing, and they manipulated the calls so they weren't the calls of real frogs. They were just slightly putting them out so that no two calls were alike.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so having random neighbors around, it didn't confuse them. They were actually just more accurate at getting back whenever they could hear other frogs, which kind of suggests that there's this sort of drive to get back when they can hear other frogs, but they don't know who the other frogs are.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a sort of like, okay, that territory's filled. Oh, that territory's filled. And they're one that they know, if there's not a call coming from it, they know there's a space there potentially. And I know they had one that they were playing a call in that territory as well. So there must be a recognition of where that territory is, even if there is a frog calling from it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it hints at something quite sophisticated, I feel, but also very stubborn. Because one thing that we forgot to mention, that I think it was, 75% of these males were found within the same 2 meters from the previous year. So, it was, over the years that they've been looking at these frogs, they pick a spot and they really stick to it.
You don't really think of a dart frog doing anything on a scale of years, do you? They're too small. But yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
This idea that they're actually in the same spot, you go away for 2 years, come back, and it's like, oh yeah, there he is. Like,
yeah,
just been here that whole time, mate. He's like, yeah, in my meters, like, I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, these Harlequin poison frogs, they return home when they're moved. They, like you say, they keep their territories for years.
And mostly only take a couple of days to get back. Like the 40 meters, mostly like under 2 days to get back to their territory. The sort of 10 to 25, you're talking like a day to half a day for the 10 meter displacement ones. Like they motor their way back. Little Harlequin legs.
I don't know, like 10 meters isn't far, Ben. Like,
yeah, but how big are they?
I could walk that in seconds, mate.
Yeah.
You're right, but they're not, that suggests, because these things, when they're on the floor, they can be pretty rapid. Like they could get back there in 10 minutes, but they're not. They're sort of like, they're kind of meandering back, I reckon. Because 10 meters, they could easily do that in 10 minutes. Like they do go at quite a peg, but then maybe they don't want to make themselves look too conspicuous or whatever. So they're sort of...
Right, but what's the equivalent? If we were to scale this up, what would be the equivalent displacement for us? And could you sprint it?
How many frogs am I? I mean, I'm probably like, what do these things weigh? Like 2 grams, maybe? And I'm 70 kilograms. So that's 70,000. So I'm 35,000 times bigger. Right?
Yeah.
Feeling pretty huge right now.
So times that by 10 meters, right? A 10 meter per...
350,000 meters. Is our maths right? That's far.
So that's 350 kilometers.
That's like Scotland, no?
Not almost.
That's wild. No, you're right. No,
it's not quite.
Not actually that. It's more like, it'd be more like Wales, like North Wales.
North Wales, aye.
Damn, that's far. Okay, all right, fair enough. I should have given them more credit.
Yeah, and are you going to sprint that distance home and get there in 10 minutes?
No.
I'm not sure if weight is the right proxy for
I don't think
for
so.
gauging the distance, because really like limb length and that would probably be a better way of translating it. But the point is it's a sizable distance. So I think half a day to get home is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
I'm sure our maths isn't right with that, but whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of concerning how bad my maths is. Yes, so they keep their territories. The territories are likely all quite similar because most males they sort of kept an eye on only mated with one female during the time they were being observed. So it kind of seems like most of these territories are quite even in quality. They just kind of want to get back to them as soon as possible, regardless of like the information they have on the quality of the territory. The territories are mostly quite even.
And quite stable too, if they're sort of keeping it year to year as well.
So the presence of opposing frog calls suggests that it motivates them to get back, but they aren't using them as a means of navigating. So they're not like, okay, I'm in the right, like you say, I'm in the right neighborhood because I recognize this call, which is kind of interesting in of itself because kind of means we don't really know how they're navigating. Like, are they using sight? Like, do they just simply recognize the area that they're in? Which, I mean, I don't know how far these things go in their life, but you know, if they're living in like a relatively dense forest, then even if you just move 10 meters, it could look completely different. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting one, whether they're using sight, whether they're using smell, or whether they have the secret magnetosense of many animals, which could be the case.
Yeah, I don't know, it's difficult to know, isn't it? Because it could be the case that maybe every once in a while they go out on a wider foray to their environment and they sort of gain a bit of knowledge outside of their territory from that. I think it is interesting that they highlight a few papers in the discussion that displaced different dendrobatids even further. And one of them is 900 meters.
Okay, that's a long way.
I mean, that is a long way. It is a different species, but what are they using? How are they getting home? Because I find it very hard to believe that they're routinely going 900 meters from the territory they were found at.
Nah, yeah, it just doesn't seem like it makes sense.
So it's got to be something else, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I told you, but I went to Costa Rica recently, and
oh yeah,
I saw a bunch of these frogs, and they just have these these little zones.
Yeah, they're homes.
They're pretty dense, you know. Like you see one, and then you walk a few meters, it's like there's another one, and presumably they've got different territories if they are males.
Yeah.
So yeah, like 900 meters would be a really, really long way.
What if they all communicate to each other and they have a sort of frog map system? And if you try to get them home in an artificial environment, they completely fail because there would be no other frogs to ask for directions.
That would be really cool. But I just can't imagine there's that much information. Is there really that much information contained in this call?
Yeah, third left on the right.
Keep going. Yeah, 100 meters. It's just not happening, is it? Maybe, but yeah, it seems unlikely. But no, it really does.
I'm well overstepping.
He's being facetious.
But the point is that they are homing. They're homing very successfully. They're homing quite in a determined straight line fashion that's pretty damn accurate. And their determination to return home is largely unaffected by other sort of covariates that measure the quality of their home. Home is home, regardless of how good it is, I guess.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah, I just love these things. Oophaga histrionica. I'm getting really obsessed. I want to do as much about dart frogs as possible. I want to do some research on dart frogs, actually. I think that would be really fun. They have a bunch of them in the labs at Bangor, actually. I can't remember what they're doing. It's criminal that I don't know what those experiments are about. Yeah, okay, cool. So have you got anything else about these homing harlequin dart frogs?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just a lovely insight to their abilities and probably speaks quite widely to their navigation, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've got a funny little snake for our new species of the bye week, so let's go there. All right, so we have a paper here entitled A New Species of Mud Snake from Southern Vietnam. This is by Nguyen, Van Lay, Lathrop, Vo, Murphy, and Che, published in Vertebrate Zoology 2024. Brand new. Newly described species of mud snake here. And we are in the family Homalopsidae, which are these sort of watery snakes that live in Asia and Australia and Papua.
Did they get all the way to Australia, do they?
Yeah, according to this paper, they're described as Asian Australopapuan.
Cool.
Australopapuan. And so, yeah, this specific genus we're talking about here is the genus Myrrophis. So far included only 2 species distributed in southern China and northern Vietnam. And Homalopsid snakes are aquatic or semi-aquatic. They like water. Some of them can actually even inhabit brackish water or the sea, which is quite unusual. And they're rear-fanged, so they've got venom delivery systems in the back of the mouth, so we probably don't have to worry too much about getting bitten by them, although I would, because they have serious teeth. Some of the images in this of the jaws with the teeth, you think, Jesus, looks like a python's mouth.
I can only assume that's because of their needs to grab slippery and often soggy prey items.
Yeah, and again, it's the whole sea snake thing, right? They're in like a 3-dimensional space where they can go up, down, left, right.
Yeah, so you can't let them get away. You got to grab them and you can't let go.
Yeah, and these teeth are strongly recurved and super sharp and long. And they're catching mostly fish, I think. They probably eat some amphibians as well. They mentioned in this paper, these Homalopsid snakes, they have quite unusual nostrils, which I must confess is something I'd never noticed. But their nostrils are actually like super far forward on the head and like right on the top.
Yeah, which, that makes sense for an animal that's bumming around in the water, right?
Yeah, they can just poke the very tippity tip of their nose out to breathe. So they're keeping a low profile.
And they've got the funny eye placement too, where their sort of eyes are poking in 2 different directions on the top of their head, slightly sticking out.
I just feel like I spend my whole life laying into how water snakes look, so I'm going to resist the urge.
Yeah.
But yeah, they look like the water snakes we saw in Thailand. What was it called? Enhydrus. They look a bit like Enhydrus.
Yep.
I only saw one, because there's a genus in Thailand called Homalopsis, right? And we saw...
Yes.
There was Homalopsis buccata, but I don't think I ever saw one alive. I think me and Kurt...
Yes.
We found a dead one that had been caught in a fish trap and it drowned. That was the only one. I think that might have been the only...
That's the only one I ever saw, yeah.
Yeah. Did we bring it back to the station or were you out with us that day? Yeah. We brought it back.
Yeah, because it was the only one, so it was sort of worth taking measurements even from a dead specimen because there was nothing, one hadn't been caught live up until that point.
It was very big.
Well, at all, I think. I don't know.
It was real fat, wasn't it? A big fat chunky thing. I'd never imagined them to be so big from pictures.
Well, that might have been because it was dead and it was sort of blowing up.
Yeah, but it was a bit blow, but it didn't grow. Like it's still, you can see how...
I know, it was pretty puffed up, mate.
It was disgusting. It was very smelly. I remember it well. I remember the discussion on whether or not to bring it back. Inevitably, we decided to. But yeah, so this one, they were doing some fieldwork in southern Vietnam, in Dak Nong province, in August 2018. And they collected 3 specimens of this genus Myrrophis. They knew it was in the genus, but they weren't sure which one it was. Although physically it looked like another one called Myrrophis chinensis. Obviously, there are only 2 others. But then they did some scale character analysis, looking at the numbers of scales and mitochondrial DNA sequences, and it showed that it was different from chinensis. They also compared it then just to check Bonetti, and it was different. So it's different than the 2 existing species, chinensis and Bonetti. And so that meant it was time to describe it as a brand new species, and they've called it Myrrophis dacrongensis.
Mm-hmm.
That is a toponym, so it's named after the place from the Dak Krong river system where the new species was discovered, and they recommend calling it the Dak Krong mud snake, which is nice and simple. We like that.
Dak Krong mud snake, yeah.
If you're in Dak Krong and you find a mud snake, what are you going to call it? The Dak Krong mud snake.
They're about just shy of 4 meters in length. This one, 4 meters?
4 meters?
4 meters? No.
I'm off it.
I've missed a decimal point. 40 centimeters.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
More like it. SVO of 370 millimeters, tail of 70. That's a much more reasonably sized. A 4 meter mud snake would be...
That'd be crazy.
I mean, that'd be some sort of Southeast Asian anaconda at that point.
Mate, I wouldn't be going out if it was 4 meters. I couldn't be hanging around with the water's edge, that's for sure. Jesus. But yeah, so this snake, from the top, it's quite nondescript. A little bit of a brown snake. but very shiny.
Bit of iridescence.
Nice iridescence, yeah, really nice iridescence. And classic counter shading. It's got a yellow belly, but it also has a really nice pattern on the belly of like these kind of 3 black lines ringed with orange, like a burnt orange.
Yes.
And in the center of the belly scales, there's like a sort of arrow on each one, a black arrow pointing toward the tail, which looks quite cool. They're nice. They're sort of dopey looking, but...
They're a bit dopey looking, but they're cute.
Understatedly beautiful. And then there's some pictures of the habitat. And the original one was actually collected at night. It was moving on the ground in a rubber plantation after heavy rain. Maybe heavy rain's enough. It's wet enough. Maybe it was...
Coaxed it out to get some frogs, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe it was also like... Could have been moving between water bodies, perhaps. It was like, it's raining, now's my chance.
Yeah.
Who knows? And the paratype's much more familiar story. So the other 2 specimens they used to describe the species were both collected in the daytime, found in a fishing net of local people, which, yeah, stands to reason because these things are often where fish are. And yeah, but the wetland forest where they collected the others, wow, really, really nice. Like, so it's a forest and it's sort of like lightly flooded. Perfect water snake habitat. Don't know that there's that much else.
Idyllic.
Yeah, don't know that there's that much else to say about Myrrophis dacronensis.
No, I think it's just a cool new mud snake, and that's about that.
Exciting to have another one. I honestly hadn't heard of this genus Myrrophis before we read this paper.
Same.
So, nice one. Homalopsids. Most of them come in that genus Enhydrus, which are the, like, what was it? Enhydrus plumbea. It looks exactly like that snake, really, to me.
It's quite similar to some Enhydrus species, yeah.
Yeah, green back, yellow belly. Really nice.
I mean, the genus is sister to Enhydrus, right? So it makes sense that they're quite similar.
Cool. All right, awesome. Have you got any other business this week?
I don't. Nope. Nothing from me.
Nothing from me either. So, yeah, all that remains to be said from us is if you want to get in touch with us, maybe you've got a correction, maybe you've got a question, herphighlights@gmail.com. We're on social media, and thank you for listening. Oh, and if you want to become a Patreon, please do support the podcast, patreon.com/herphighlights. Massive thank you to everyone who supports us on there. Really appreciated. Thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for listening.